when I saw Star Wars as a 6-year-old, I told my dad afterwards, like, Dad, did we not make it? Did people like us not make it in the future? Because nobody looks like us. And my dad being the good dad that he is, he was like, oh, Jorge, Chewbacca's Mexican. Of course we made it. But it was one of those moments as a kid where, again, if you didn't see yourself in movies, then you started thinking, are we not worth it? Are we not meant to be heroes? Are we not meant to travel into space? And so I was that guy who, the more people said no to, the more it just fueled me. And in a weird way, it kind of became my stubborn way to prove, no, the thing you think is my weakness, I'm going to turn that into my strength.
Kristen Maldonado here, and welcome to another episode of Pop Culture Planet, where we cover the world of entertainment while also shining a light on representation and inclusion. This week, we are joined by the legendary, the brilliant Jorge R Gutierrez, a Mexican animator, writer, director, and voice actor. He does it all. He's best known for El Tigre, The Book of Life, Maya and the Three. He is just incredible at creating these rich worlds that connect, that really allow you to dive deeper into both the story and him as a creator. And I just had so much fun with this conversation and learning how he makes his stories so universal, how he stays true to his Mexican roots, and just all of the excitement that he has around every project that he's worked on. I hope you guys enjoy this conversation. I love your background with all your work behind you.
It's crazy. My wife, she thinks I should just put prices on everything because it's starting to look like a store.
Well,
I like how peaceful your space is.
Oh, it's so empty, but I do have your books with me over here.
Aww.
I'm a huge fan of yours, so I'm really excited to speak with you today and just kind of learn more about your craft and, how you started and how you got to where you are, really. Where did you first find your love of entertainment? Did you always want to write and animate and draw and direct and voice act and all of that stuff? I mean, you do everything.
You know what it was? It was not seeing people like me doing it in a weird way freed me, because it meant, well, if no one's done it, I have to do it now. And that was a driving force early on. And as a kid, even, like, when I saw Star Wars as a 6-year-old, I told my dad afterwards, like, Dad, did we not make it? Did people like us not make it in the future? Because nobody looks like us. And my dad being the good dad that he is, he was like, oh, Jorge, Chewbacca's Mexican. Of course we made it. But it was one of those moments as a kid where, again, if you didn't see yourself in movies, then you started thinking, are we not worth it? Are we not meant to be heroes? Are we not meant to travel into space? The same thing with fantasy. I love fantasy movies, and I would see them and I would go, wait, where are we? Like, no one, especially growing up in Mexico, literally going, no one in any of those movies looks like any of us. And then going to museums and seeing the history, the vast history, of the Mayans and the Aztecs and all the incredible cultures that we come from, and being, why isn't that on screen? Look at all these stories of princesses and warriors and dragons and kingdoms and what? So it was a lot of that growing up, and then a lot of hearing this idea that you can't relate to people like that, right? Like, especially when I got to Hollywood, constantly being told, what's our in to your story? Because this is feels very outside of the U.S., right? Back where they use certain ways to codify things. So they always wanted basically a white character to be the character that takes us into the other culture. And I remember always saying, but hold on, I've been relating to white main characters my whole life. What do you mean? Like, we can relate to aliens and you can't relate to Mexicans? Like,
Mhm.
what? So it was a struggle early on, but I have to say, the thing that everybody warned me about, the thing that I was constantly sort of with loving tenderness told was, if you try to make stuff about your culture, you're not gonna find work because no one's doing that stuff. And I had teachers in school who loved my stuff, but who were trying to protect me, going, Jorge, if your portfolio looks like all this stuff, you're not gonna find work. And they were absolutely right, by the way. Because when I graduated, I would show my work and studios would go, this is all awesome. Where's your, non-Mexican stuff? And it was one of those moments where being naive and not knowing in a weird way allowed me to be free to just keep pursuing it and keep pursuing it. And I got sent, my manager, who I'm still with, I got sent to every studio in town when I graduated from school to pitch Book of Life. And here's some kid out of school. Uh, my student short had won an Emmy, so that basically opened a bunch of doors everywhere. And at that time, I remember people looking at my artwork and looking at the story. And this is every studio, right? This is DreamWorks, Disney, Fox, literally Universal, every place. And I would get these meetings. They would look at me like, "What? A movie about dead Mexicans?" And I would go, "No, no, no! It's a love story, and it's about forgiveness and mercy, and basically pitch them the whole story." And they would write coverage on my back then. They would write coverage on outlines, and they would give them back to you. So you would read all the stuff they would put on the cover of them. And I remember my favorite one was, "No one will ever make a movie about dead Mexicans." And I wish I kept it because I should have framed that coverage page. Uh, but all that stuff, in a weird way, just fueled me more. It was like, all right, I guess I have to try harder. And so I was that guy who, the more people said no to, the more it just fueled me. And in a weird way, it kind of became my stubborn way to prove, no, 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 the thing you think is my weakness, I'm going to turn that into my strength. And sure enough, when people started looking for projects about Latin America, and specifically for about Mexico, I was the first guy that was contacted every single time. And by the way, some of these were awful, like Taco the movie and Guacamole the movie. It's always food back then. Piñata the movie. It was, and I would go like, so what's it about? What do you mean? It's about a piñata. Right, but what's the story? I don't know. It's about a piñata. I was like, that's not a
Mhm.
movie. That's like Candy Bar the movie. So it was really weird. But it has been a quite a journey. I'm originally from Mexico City. I left when I was 9 years old. My parents moved me to Tijuana. Tijuana being on the border with San Diego, so very San Diego pretty conservative. Tijuana not conservative at all. Pretty chaotic growing up in both of those places, and I always became a child of duality because I was not from Tijuana, but I wasn't from Mexico City anymore. Then once I started working and going to school in the border, I was never from either side. And now when I came to Hollywood, I was never really a U.S. Latino, and I wasn't a Mexican Latino anymore because I had left. So I've always traveled in between those two lands, and I think kids of the border, we're very comfortable with that. We're comfortable sort of reinventing ourselves depending on what side we're on. And I think that's a huge part of the advantage I've had with culture,
Mhm.
where I've seen what happens to our culture when it goes south, and I see what happens to the cultures from down there when they come north. And so being able to sort of dissect and
Mhm.
go, all right, why are these things connecting? Why are these things not connecting? I think has been the thing that's given me honestly an edge. And I can definitely pinpoint moments where I go, this is so specific to the culture that no one outside the culture is going to get it. And if it's a plot point, that's not good. It's got to be, the themes have to be universal. The tone has to be universal. It has to be, should be as authentic as possible. But there are certain things that have to resonate with somebody living in Japan and somebody living in France never been to Latin America. I have no idea what a Latino experience is in the US or any of this stuff. It has to be universal. So I've become very, very uh, focused on how to make the culture accessible and digestible and empathetic to people from other places, but at the same time being incredibly smart about authenticity,
Hmm.
because if we're not careful, and I'm seeing it now, when things don't do well and they blame the authenticity, then the message is we don't want stuff from them. If a movie about a culture made by people not of the culture does really well worldwide, and the movie of the culture made by the people of the culture doesn't, Hollywood goes, see, we told you.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why, to me, it was such a aha moment in Hollywood when Black Panther did really well, when Wonder Woman did really well, because if those movies had not done well, right, Black Panther bombs, they go, see, we told you. And Wonder Woman doesn't do well, see, we told you. And by the way, when a movie bombs, no one goes, see, we told you white guy directors shouldn't be doing this, because there's a
Hmm.
bazillion successful white guy director movies. So that's the landscape we're in right now, right? And I feel, especially these days where Netflix stock has dropped, one of the big giant things that's happening is finger pointing has started, and all this woke, anti woke sentiment that's starting to pop up everywhere is starting to worry people like me, because when things aren't going well, of course they blame minorities. Of course they blame the things that are different immediately. So that's the scary part of where we're at today, right?
Yeah.
April 22nd, the finger pointing has begun.
Yeah, and when you think about it, we don't need to be putting every project on the same standard. Like a show like The Babysitter's Club is going to have a
Right.
completely different audience than Squid Game, but does that mean they're not both valid in having their stories told? It's just completely different. And I loved what you were saying about how you just kept sticking with your guns, because it's so easy to be like, well, I've never seen someone like myself doing this. Everyone's saying no. I guess I'm gonna stop or do something different. And I think now people are hopefully starting to see, I mean, we keep going back and forth, but we're starting to see that when people are their authentic selves and are putting their authentic work out there, people are starting to be drawn to that. I mean, you look at, like you said, the Book of Life, you had to go to all of these places and everyone was saying no. Or even Squid Game, the guy took 10 years before someone said yes finally to making his project. Or even my Big Fat Greek Wedding,
Yeah.
recently at 25th anniversary, and they were like, people said no to me at first. Just because you don't understand that person's background doesn't mean all these other people in the world don't connect to it. So for you, for Book of Life, how did you finally break through to get that made?
Early on, when I first started pitching stuff, one of the things that I started getting feedback on was, this is great, but if you hadn't explained to me the culture, I don't think I would get the plot. And I don't think I would get it.
Mm.
Right. So, and obviously, these were people who were not of the culture. And especially back then, every studio head, every development executive, every single person was heterosexual white man. So it was clear to me, the decision makers that are making these choices, whatever I'm pitching has to be understandable by them, regardless of the artistic integrity of the thing. Just on a pure mathematical, logical thing, it has to make sense to them. And as I started doing development at multiple places, I just became friends with all the development people, because I wanted to learn. So I would just ask them, like, so what's connecting, what's not connecting, what do you think are the things that make sense and don't make sense? And this is all the world of animation, so it's different than live action. But the thing that it all came back to for me was universal themes trump everything, right? So for example, I I graduated in the year 2000, so there was a lot of movies that really affected me from all over the world back then. So Amores Perros from Mexico made a big impact on me. Devil's Backbone from Guillermo del Toro, City of God from Brazil. Amelie was like a big deal to me. My favorite movie is Seven Samurai, right? So I've never been to Japan. I don't speak Japanese. Why is that my favorite movie? Filmmaking, craft, all that stuff is incredible in that movie. The thing that got me about Seven Samurai was dying warriors saving ungrateful farmers from bandits in a losing battle. That could happen in Mexico. That could happen in France. That could happen in Brazil. That could happen anywhere in the world at any time. It's super universal. The young and the old teaming up together with the rich and the poor. Like all those themes resonate everywhere. Amelie, a lonely girl who goes out of her way to make others happy, eventually finds love and is rewarded for everything she's done. That could happen in, Boyle Heights. That could happen in Tijuana. That could happen anywhere. So the more I got into it, and I'm a big hip hop fan. I always like the first albums when rappers break through or groups break through, and they were always about the struggle to make it and their lives. And same thing with books. And same thing with, honestly, my favorite first filmmaker movies are usually about where they're from. And because they had limited resources, they're telling really personal stories. So that, like a scientist, I deduced all this stuff and I went, oh my God, what we make should feel like it's a privilege that we're letting people into our worlds. But the closer people look at this, painting of the worlds, they should realize it's a mirror. And all these experiences can happen to them or might have happened to them or people they know. So the themes are universal. So that's how I break down my work now. And I can go as crazy as I want as long as I anchor the heart in something universal. So Book of Life, man who could be a bullfighter, it would be really easy. That would have been the easy road for him. Falls in love, but tries to be himself, thinks the girl of his dreams has died, basically commits suicide, right? He lets a god kill him, goes down to the underworld, and she's not dead. So now he's got to figure out how to come back. So that's basically Book of Life. Mm-hmm. That could happen anywhere. That's Greek mythology. That's Chinese mythology. The more I looked into it, pretty much all world cultures have a story of someone going to the underworld to try to come back. So that's how I approach everything. Maya is the same thing. Maya to me was, I'm going to use all the fairy tale tropes that I love, and I'm going to give you a new take on them. And one of my favorite stories is someone sacrificing themselves for something greater and bigger than they ever expected. Right? Because I think that's what we do as humans, right? We sacrifice our youth, we sacrifice stuff for our loved ones, for our families. We become a parent, you sacrifice for your kids. Your parents have sacrificed for you. Like, we live in a world of sacrifices, right? Everybody has to sacrifice something. So what's the ultimate sacrifice? You give your whole life up for something. As a kid, I grew up and was told about the hero the hero children of Mexico, los niños héroes. So the story, the history of it is when the U.S. invaded Mexico, the last stand were the military cadets in Mexico City, and it was basically supposed to be kids, and they died fighting to defend the Chapultepec Castle. And one of them wrapped himself up in the Mexican flag and jumped off to his death before the Americans could get the Mexican flag. As a kid, I was like, holy cow, kids like me died to protect our country? And I remember looking around at the room and all my, boy friends were like, yeah. And all the girls were like, what the fuck? What about us? And then as I looked through Mexican history, there were not a lot of female heroes. And historically, there have been amazing heroes, but the culture didn't highlight that. And then when I looked at, you know, the Popol Vuh and Mayan mythology and Aztec mythology, there are some female heroes, but 99% of female characters in mythology are usually the victim, the prize, the object of adoration. Uh, you know, sometimes the goddesses are not the greatest ones, and some of them are, you know, the big ones are female, but they don't act. They just watch. So for Maya, it was, I'm going to hack mythology. I'm going to go in there, and with all due respect to mythology, it's all made up. Uh, and mythology reflects the views of their time. So I'm going to write my own mythology inspired by the history, inspired by the culture, and be very respectful. But I'm going to tell a fantasy version of what I grew up watching, which are my mother, my sister, my wife, basically be warriors in a super macho, uh, you know, not easy for women culture, and seeing them fight their battles and win and sacrifice their lives. Right, my mom sacrificed everything for her kids. My wife has sacrificed a lot to be with me. My sister. So that, to me, that was the love letter to this idea that Latinas basically hold up the culture and they sacrifice themselves for all of us. So that's the theme of Maya. And that, to me, that's universal.
I love what you said about how you kind of like hacked by, all the things that you've watched and realize that like that universal connection, but also like that personal connection. Like one of the things that I love about your projects, and I think so many fans love, and that's why everyone's just like waiting for your next thing, is because you really put so much of yourself and your life and the things you like into the projects and connect them as well. So it feels like you're coming into this big Latino world that has all of these elements and all of these stories that kind of go back into one another, whether it's connecting with characters or music or the way that you like set up a fight sequence that kind of reflects something from another project. Like those are some of the things that I just love watching and dissecting when I'm watching something that you've created.
Oh my God. Thank you so much. You know, the way I approach it is, these are murals, right? To me, the stuff I make are basically moving murals. And I want all these murals to connect at the end. Like when it's all done, it's all connected. I'm a big believer in that shared universe idea. And there are recurring themes, there are recurring characters, there are recurring sort of evolutions as I grow older and as I become a parent, and now that I'm about to turn 50, like I see the world in very different ways. I still think I'm a kid at heart, but I loved in movies when I would go, "Oh, that guy is that guy from that other thing," or "Oh my God, that goddess was in blah blah blah," or "Oh my God, Predator 2, when he opened the thing, there's a head from the alien from Aliens." Like, I love all that stuff, and I think the way we consume media now, thanks to the internet, is now the communities can grow and exchange theories. And I'm on the autism spectrum, so I watch stuff over and over and over. So I definitely make stuff with layers, knowing that hopefully people are going to rewatch this and they're going to start catching little things and lines from this thing connect to this thing. And I'm a big believer in foreshadowing everything. If you rewatch the first episode of Maya, we tell you the ending in the first. A push basically outright just tells you Maya is going to be the sun right from the start. Spoiler alert. So I love that stuff. And for anybody who's into what we've done so far, all the new stuff I'm making, it's all connecting, and Netflix has been really cool about letting me really play with that stuff. And again, it's one of those things where people would go, "Wait, you want to put Radiohead in a Mexican movie? What? Well, you can't do that." And I would always go, "What do you mean you can't? Why?" And they would go, "Well, because Radiohead's not Mexican." I'm like, "I know, but I don't just eat Mexican food. I don't just listen to Mexican music. Uh, I think what we do is we grab things from all over the world and we make them our own." And that song, Creep, was a big deal to me when I was in high school. It really spoke to me. And then I heard a little mariachi kid sing it in Mexico City at a mariachi place, and people didn't know what to make of it. But by the end of it, he got a standing ovation. I remember Guillermo del Toro told me like, "Oh, that song's a tough song to get. It's really, really hard to get that song. They don't really let anybody use that song." And I wrote Radiohead a letter and explained everything. We showed him a video, and I like to believe Tom York read the letter and went, "Yeah, this crazy Mexican guy is gonna do us right," and we get to put Creep in the movie. But those are the sort of things that, if the knee jerk reaction of someone going, "You can't do that," and I would go, "Okay," and just take it out and put, Cielito Lindo or like a really traditional Mexican song, then that's gone. So this idea of we're quirky and different and odd, and you know, I got a lot of like, "Why is Ice Cube in Book of Life?" And I
Why
was like,
not?
"What? Right?
Yeah,
Why not?"
why
And to me, it
not?
was, I want, a goddess of, I want the people who voice these characters should be gods in their own right. So to me, it was Ron Perlman. To me, is a god of cinema. Kate del Castillo to me is a goddess of novelas, and then Ice Cube to me is a god of hip hop. So that's why I cast those three. And people are like, "That doesn't make any sense." Well, it made sense to me.
Yeah, I love that so much because you're just so true to yourself and your vision. And like, if someone doesn't like it, it's like, "Well, I'm going to figure out a way to make it work because this is what I believe." And I think that's why your projects have been so impactful and so powerful because Creep, that's a song that has spoken to me as well. And like seeing those people, like just because, you might be Mexican or Puerto Rican or Dominican or whatever it is, doesn't mean you don't have connections to all these other things in the world. And I love that. I bow down to you, man.
and,
Yeah.
and by the way, if these things don't do well, then I don't get another shot to do them. So for me, it's, if I'm gonna fall on my own sword.
Mhm.
Like if I make something and it doesn't do well, then it's on me. But if it does well, then let me make more. And at the same time, I got this big, big, big warning again from Guillermo. And he said, "Jorge, you have to be careful in your career, because if you make something that you are not passionate about and it becomes very successful, you're screwed, because people will want that from you forever and ever. If you make something that you love and it becomes incredibly successful, that's really bad too, because you're only going to have, basically everybody's going to want you to do that forever. So what
Mhm.
you want, this advice, is make something you love that a lot of people love, but it's not such a big thing that forever and ever you can never do anything again. So that's been my journey so far. But yeah, I'm terrified to be told you can't make your own stuff anymore. And I tried for a little bit. After Book of Life came out, I have a crazy, basically kung fu space western with lots of Mesoamerican stuff in it. That was just too crazy back then. And Trump won the presidency, so no one wanted to touch anything about the border. To this day, the border, is a touchy subject. So I remember Guillermo said, Jorge, I think it'd be really good for you to go work at a studio in someone else's sandbox. I did Blade 2. Alfonso Cuarón did one of the Harry Potters. These are the examples I'm giving, right? So I'm like, what? So I'm friends with Chris and Phil, the Lego guys, and they had a really cool Lego racing movie. And so I went over to Warner Brothers for a bit, and it was a racing movie about race. So it was about like, some people are born with more bricks than others, and the theme of the movie was that what matters is, what do you do with the bricks you're born with, right? So it was all about gentrification and identity, and it was very subversive, as all their movies tend to be. And I was really, really into it. And then at some point, I realized, oh no, this is a big corporation, and this is a toy company. Their needs are very specific, and I might not fit in those machines,
Mm.
right? Pun intended. I might be the wrong piece here. And so I quit. I said, you know what? This is not even my thing. And then Guillermo was like, see, I told you, you should only work on your own stuff. I was like, what happened? He's like, oh, good. You learned your lesson, Jorge. Uh, but it became apparent to me that if I'm gonna if I'm gonna consume my life, if I'm going to write these things and design them and direct them and voice them and basically like put my life into these things, because I'm not one of those people that separates life and work. Like my life is my work. Then it has to be something I'm willing to live with forever and ever. And animation takes so long to make that these are commitments. These are. It's like going to college every time you make a movie, right? It's 4 years.
Mm.
So that commitment comes with a price, and so it better be something I'm absolutely in love with. It's going to be really hard to make, and hopefully at the end I get to work with incredible collaborators. That's my favorite thing about what I do. I get to work with just incredible people, and we make something, and people are into it, and then I get to make more. Right? I'm the happy taco guy. Where like, you like my tacos? I can make more.
I love that what you were saying before also about like being autistic and kind of inserting that into your work. And I know that you had recently posted on Instagram about that and how that has sort of, been kind of ingrained into some of the work that you've done without even necessarily realizing it. And I'd love to hear a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So my son was diagnosed when he was 2.5 years old, autistic, and my parents literally said, "That's impossible. You were exactly like that at that age." So it was a big like what aha moment.
Mhm.
Uh, so as my kid kept growing and I learned a ton about autism, I started going, wait a second, am I on the spectrum? And I did all the online tests because there's a bunch of online tests you can do, and none of those are real proof that you're autistic. At the end of every one of those tests, they basically say you need to see a specialist to be properly diagnosed. So after doing those, I contacted a specialist. We were living in Dallas back then, and I did all the tests, and a lot of those tests are questions to your parents and to your partner, and sure enough, it came back. Oh yeah, you're absolutely autistic, and here's the things you're good at. Here's the things you're not exactly good at. Um, clearly for me, it's been a positive. Obviously, there's a bazillion versions of autism. Everybody's completely different. Um, but it's been something in my life, and it's been a thing that now that I look back, I go, oh, that's why that happened, or that's why I didn't catch that, or that's why I'm really good at this. So I was diagnosed twice gifted, and I'm really good at certain things, and I'm not so good at other things. But the things that I'm good at are basically I can process things really fast. I can remember things really well. So I'll watch a movie and I'll remember specific shots, and it's great for a film geek to be on the autism spectrum because you remember everything. Uh, and I can also hyper focus for hours. So I can, if I need to, I can just go. All right, I'm going to work for 8 hours or 6 hours, and sometimes Sandra has to come in and tell me to go to the bathroom because I literally just dive into the work. So that's been really, really good for me, and it's been a thing that every character I write, especially the leads, I base them on me. And so looking back at my work, I go, wait, so if I'm on the spectrum and these characters are based on me and my life experiences, and wait a second, all my characters are outsiders trying to fit in, and all my characters are trying to prove something that they're worthy of everybody. Wait, what? Everybody's autistic. Like every character I've done is autistic. So that was another like moment for me.
Wow.
And now that I'm making new stuff, I'm having characters who are more openly on the spectrum. But it's always been there, and it's always to me. It's always been an incredible positive. The negatives have been minimum for me. I just there was things I can relate to, and there were things I couldn't understand. There were moments where I just felt everybody would laugh at a thing and I didn't get it, or everybody would be into a thing and I literally would go, "Wow, well, I don't get this. Why is everybody into this?"
Mhm.
So that as a kid was a little jarring. As I got older, I think people just thought, "Oh, he's a weirdo. He's like a weirdo artist." So that was kind of the way people dealt with me. Eventually, when I went to film school, I would say half of the people in film school are on the spectrum. They just don't know it. And then when I graduated and started working in the industry, I'm going to guess 40% to 50% of people are on the spectrum.
Wow.
I'm going to guess half of film directors are on the spectrum. Um, it's just thinking differently and processing things differently. Definitely an advantage.
Wow, that's so interesting. And going off of that, I'd love to hear a little bit more about like how you found your animation style and also how you started voice acting and bringing your own characters to life in that way.
So I found my style early on, um, when I went to CalArts, this really important school for animation, and I did drawings that I thought the Americans wanted to see. So I did Bugs Bunny and Bart Simpson and Mickey Mouse and all this stuff. And then I had a portfolio of things that I loved about Mexico. So it was like Dead and Dead and Chupacabras and Luchadores and all this stuff. And that was just to see if I could get into painting schools. When I showed my drawings to the animation school, the professor there, Jules Engel, basically told me, "This is crap. You do this, a copy machine could have done this. This is terrible. You have no voice. You shouldn't be in animation." Thankfully, he also looked at my painting portfolio and he said, "Why did you do this?" And, and I couldn't answer. I was like, "I don't know. This is the stuff I love." And he goes, "Well, why did you do those horrible drawings?" I said, "Well, because I thought that's what you wanted to see." And he said, "That's your problem.
Mm.
Stop doing the things you think we want to see. Do this. And the more you do this, the more original you'll be." And I've never seen this stuff in a movie. I've never seen this stuff in a TV show. It's Hungarian. If you can make this move, you will be something different. So do that. So from that point on, I was like, that's it. Instead of looking at, Chuck Jones and Walt Disney and all this stuff, I'm going to be looking at all the artists of Latin America that I admire and I love, muralists, and Basquiat's my favorite painter, Picasso. Like, I'm going to look at everybody that inspired me from this side, and I'm going to bring that into cartoons, and I'm going to bring that into animation. So I just looked at different sources for inspiration, and I think your style is everything you love and everything you don't like, because you don't do it. So I think that's how it developed, and it took a long time eventually. Uh, but the thing that really spoke to me early on was there's a thing called draftsmanship, right? Like how well you technically draw, but there's something behind that. That's the ideas, the creativity, and that is more important than draftsmanship,
Mm-mm.
because those ideas work as movie scripts and work as show ideas and movie ideas and character design ideas and location ideas and plot ideas. And so I realized early on I need to get really good at that, and then I can hire people to help me with technical things. And
Wow.
my path to make my own things is going to be to make my own things. So I'm going to make as many shorts as I can. I'm going to write as much as I can. I'm going to draw as much as I can. So that was that path. The way I got into voice acting was every film student, or most film students, voice their own animations, right? At some point, you start working with voice actors, but you still do scratch, right? Scratch is basically when you can't get a voice actor, you just do it rough for yourself. Every person in animation, especially in television, does a ton of scratch. So at some point, you get really comfortable doing scratch. Really smart creators voice their own characters, right? Everybody from Mike Judge to Seth MacFarlane to, I mean, the history of animation, Alex Hirsch.
Mhm.
Povenmire, like there's a lot of creators who basically have voice their characters. So when it came to my moment on El Tigre, I was really unsure. I said those guys sound really good. I'd rather just hire actors, but I still did a lot of scratch. So the first time I really did it for reals was Book of Life, and at that point I had scratched the whole movie, so I knew the movie inside out. So then there were certain characters where people were like, "Well, that guy's really funny. Who's that?" And I would go, "That was me." Keep him. We should totally keep him. So it took someone else saying, let's keep that voice. And then by the time we got to Maya, I was like, well, I want to play the dad because she's my creation. And this is, I'm a dad in real life and I'm designing the character. And it's basically my wife's version of how I talk. So you know how when you imitate your significant other, you do a weird voice. That's me doing her version of me talking. So that's how I got into that. But I also started getting cast in other shows, right? Like in Ninja Turtles and Casagrandes and Victor and Valentino. And I would just go honestly to learn from voice directors because I just wanted to be directed to learn from each one. But yeah, it was a I kind of stumbled into voice acting. I'm trying not to do it unless it's my own stuff, uh, but it's super fun and it's very competitive. So a lot of times, I'm asked to audition, and it's my way to go. No, 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 I don't. You know what? I'd rather not. And then they go, all right, they gave you the part, well played. And I'm like, no, I didn't want to audition because I didn't want to do it. But it's been funny. It's been great. Like I got to do Diego Rivera for Animaniacs. So it's just weird. It's just weird that voice acting is really hard. So I'm super thankful that people have asked me to do it.
Well, you're incredible at it. I loved listening to you and your wife voice Maya's parents in Maya and the Three. Like you said, it gives you like that feeling of like you guys created this world and created Maya, and here you are as her parents. So
And by the way, I had to trick Sandra because she scratched Frida on Alpigra, she scratched Maria in Book of Life. So she was scratching the mom on Maya. And I kept telling, because she didn't want to do the voice, and I kept going, no, 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 don't worry, don't worry. There's no pressure. It's just scratch. We're gonna get Salma Hayek. We're gonna get like a famous actress to do the voice. But meanwhile, I knew it was gonna be Sandra. So I think she figured it out. Or like at some point she was like, wait a second, why are people animating my voice?
oh
And
my
obviously she was really upset, but then she forgave me.
yes, yes. Oh my gosh, that's too funny. Now, I'd love to like kind of go through a couple of your projects and maybe just hear like some fun facts about
Sure.
each of them. The first one, I'd love to, go back to the beginning to your Carmelo short.
So Carmelo was my Cal Arts student short. It was I'd never done computer animation. It was for my master's degree, and so I forced myself to learn computer animation because I figured this is the future. I should learn it. It's really sad. It's about the Book of Life came from this. It's wooden characters. It's about a little boy who basically dies uh, trying to uphold the honor of the family. He sneaks out of his house in the middle of the night. His father's a bullfighter. He bullfights a bull. The moon and the stars come down, and the bull kills them. And so the short starts on Day of the Dead, and we get to see what happened to him. And then it goes back to Day of the Dead, and we see the pigeon eating the bread, which is basically the soul of the little boy visiting his family. And the idea was always, Mayan and Aztec times, a lot of the beliefs were you will be judged not by the way you live, but by the way you die. And so this little boy died in a very honorable way, so he was going to live forever. So I finished this short. Won a student Emmy, and Sandra voices Carmelo. I voiced the dad. So there's a little Easter eggs in there. It's online if anybody wants to see it. Uh, and that was the first thing that basically started my career. And I remember going to different studios and people having the tape, VHS tape back then of my short like nothing freaked me out more than going to somebody's office and seeing a copy of my student short in there. Uh, but yeah, it started my career. It really did. And I remember at that time we had teachers who'd say, your student short, your final student short, might be the last time you get to tell your own story. So make it count. And if you do a really good job, they might let you make more. And every hour, this stayed with me, every hour you put into these things will come back to you tenfold. And it totally did. It totally. So when people ask me, like, how do I become a filmmaker? Student short. That's how we all started.
Next up, I'd love to hear a little bit more about El Tigre, The Adventures of Manny Rivera.
So El Tigre was at that point our fifth pilot. The previous four had not gone to series, so we had learned a ton. And honestly, I think by the time we made that El Tigre pilot, we knew what we were doing a lot more than when we started. And it was one of those, you know, things where it had to be really relatable, but at the same time, it had to be really personal. So for me, the El Tigre is about a kid whose dad is a superhero, whose grandfather is a supervillain, and he has to decide what side he's going to be on. When I was a kid, my dad is an architect, so he could draw, so I thought he was a superhero. And my grandfather was in the Mexican army; he was a general, and I thought he was a supervillain. And my aunts would grab me by the cheeks and go, "Jorgito, when you grow up, are you going to be like your dad, or are you going to be like your grandpa?" So
Mm.
that's literally where El Tigre came from. The secondary character, Frida, is based on Sandra's life. Her father was a doctor. She has three sisters who went into medicine. She was an artist. She was the black sheep of the family. And me being we met in high school, so I was the high school boyfriend who wanted to be a crazy artist. If she was the black sheep of the family, I was the satanic sheep of the family. And so in the show, Frida, her dad's the chief of police, her mom's a judge, her sisters are cadets, and she wants to be a rock star. So it's the same exact dynamic. We only made 26 episodes. The show won 5 Emmys, which is a record for one season.
Amazing.
It did really, really well wherever brown people live. It did not do well in Middle America. I could have predicted the Trump presidency, because back then Nick would give us the hate mail, and I remember reading this stuff, just going, "What?" Like, first of all, who takes the time to write hate mail pre-internet? But
Right.
the letters would be like, "We don't like these characters. Dora was submissive. These kids are not." Or my favorite one, "This movie's for them." No, I got this one on Book of Life. "This movie's for them. It's not for us." I was like, what? And all that stuff just makes me go, okay, I have to just keep trying. I have to keep trying harder. The worst thing I can do is just get angry, because what's that going to do? Nothing.
Mhm. Yeah.
So El Tigre was definitely a crazy experience. It was 26 episodes, 11-minute shorts. We just started literally yesterday. They're doing an El Tigre art book.
Oh,
So
well,
that's
I'll add that one to my collection.
Yeah, it's coming next year, and it's going to be freaking amazing. And I'm assuming they're going to put it on Paramount Plus any day now. But yeah, it was for anybody who loves Book of Life and Maya and the Three. The villain in El Tigre is La Muerte en Xibalba's daughter, Sartana, because I had already written Book of Life back then. And then
Wow.
if you watch Book of Life, there's Easter eggs of El Tigre in there. And then if you watch Maya, the first opening shot of Maya has the original El Tigre in there.
In the
And Nick,
cave,
yeah, and
right?
Nickelodeon, we had to ask permission. Nickelodeon, I had to ask Disney permission to put the Book of Life characters in there. So all the studios have been really cool about letting me reference how all these things are connected. But yeah, it was our first one. We look back at it now, and it's super crazy and wild, and it really reflects when we got together in high school, because it's kind of a blur, and we did a lot of crazy stuff that show inspired.
Oh my gosh, I love that. Well, I'm hoping one day down the line we'll have like a whole book of just everything in order. I want to
Oh,
read it all, how everybody connects, all of it. I'm excited for the El Tigre art book. That's going to be awesome. So for next one, the Book of Life, any fun facts that maybe you haven't shared before?
whew. So Book of Life, life-changing experience. I mean, honestly, the big one. Let's see. What story have I not shared? Uh, there's a good one. Uh, I remember uh, being flown. Channing Tatum was making the Jupiter Ascending movie, I believe, in Chicago. So we go to Chicago, and the way it worked back then is I had to pitch the movie to every actor to convince them to do it. And uh, a lot of them thought Guillermo was going to be there, right? I was literally an unknown director. So I think the agents would lie to the actors and go, Jorge and Guillermo del Toro are going to pitch, your client the movie. So of course Guillermo would never go to these things. So I go to Channing Tatum's hotel. I guess they were shooting. They were shoot during it was nighttime shoots. So all the meetings were at night with them. And I go to the hotel room, and I think he was like in the middle of a party. And I'm like, oh no, this is the worst moment to pitch up this movie. And he was super friendly and super, Channing's like an incredible guy. So I go to his hotel room. Everybody like leaves this, and he's like, all right, man, let's hear it. And I start pitching in the movie, and he's laughing and all this stuff. And at the end, he's like, who do you want me to play in this? And I'm like, you play Joaquin. It's a love triangle. It's going to be between Zoe Saldana and Diego Luna and you, and it's like this trio. But I think he goes, but I was born in the U.S. He was trying to tell me he wasn't Latino, and I kept going like, look, you are basically Captain Latin America. You represent the super handsome, over the top, suave, Superman of that time. And he hugs me and he goes, Jorge, I'm not Mexican, right? And I'm like, yeah, I totally know. And I go, and look, in Latin America, it's not going to be your voice. You're gonna be dubbed as someone else. But in the US, in the English version, I love this idea that somebody with an accent like Diego Luna is gonna steal the girl from a suave, super handsome man like you. And he was like, I get it. I'm in. So that's how we got Channing Tatum, who is a sweetheart. And then for anybody who watches Book of Life, Joaquin yelling his own name as his sort of thing was completely improvised by Channing Tatum.
Oh wow!
He was working with Chris and Phil on 21 Jump Street, so I think those guys figured out he's funny, and I think those guys figured out he's really good at improv. But I would say half of the lines in Book of Life from Channing are just him goofing off and improvising. I loved it. I mean, again, someone that I'm a big fan of Magic Mike, and I told him, I said, I think this is the Citizen Kane of male stripper movies. Huge fan of that movie. And then Fluffy Gabriel Iglesias was in Magic Mike, and I would always ask him Magic Mike questions. But anyways, people at that time were like, why is Channing Tatum in this movie? And I was like, because it totally makes sense to me. And now people watching, they're like, yeah, that makes sense. But back then it was kind of a what?
Next up, Son of Jaguar.
All right, so Son of Jaguar, I got approached by Google to do a virtual reality short. They were really cool, and they basically said, do whatever you want. And I remember putting on the goggles, the VR goggles, and I said, oh, you become someone else, right? When you put on the goggles, that's lucha libre. You put on a mask, and you literally become someone else.
Oh, what a great connection.
And what better way to feel empathy than to walk in someone else's shoes, which is VR, right? It's an empathy machine. So I said, I want to do a really tragic story about an over-the-hill wrestler who's missing a leg, and he has a wife and a baby and a little boy, and he's come to terms with, I can't keep fighting. My family needs money. I'm going to die in the ring. Literally, right? I'm going to sacrifice myself, and they're going to get the money from life insurance. Super tragic, by the way. Total Mexican neorealist movie. And then as the short keeps going, the wrestler basically in their fight dies. His ancestors appear to him, especially his father, and they tell him, "You think your family is a burden, and you think you're not whole because you're missing a leg. Your family is your strength, dummy." Right? So he wakes up and he puts it together, and obviously it's a cartoon. His missing leg. He realizes, oh, the little boy, with the permission of the mother, jumps into the ring, and the little boy becomes his leg. And now the wrestler is complete because his family is complete. And he realizes his family is his strength. And he wins, and all the ancestors are happy. And that, I basically spoiled the plot, but that's what that was. I think it's about 8 minutes. Emmy nominated, Annie nominated. We didn't win anything, but man, I'm super proud of that thing. And just like with everything else, there's Easter eggs all over it. When you walk down this hallway, there's all these wrestler murals, and you can see Book of Life, you can see El Tigre. It's all there. I mean, you can see some Kung Fu Space Western stuff in there that's coming. There might be a Maya one in there. So there's a lot of stuff in there. But that was a little short, and a lot of people haven't seen it. But I'm super proud of it.
Well, I have seen it, and I remember that the little referee guy then ended up in Maya.
Yeah, it's the
Uh,
same ref.
the music,
Yep,
the
Balanchon is
song,
in there.
yes, is in Maya as well, and I see even the little connections to a short film, like it all connects, and I'm like paying attention, and I love it.
And by the way, that one I got to do the voice, and my wife did the wife, and it was the first time, honestly, where I started going, I feel these characters so much. I should just voice some of them.
Yeah, you can really see how you put yourself and your family and everything into every project, for real. It's amazing. Okay, so next up, Maya and the Three.
Whew. So Maya and the Three goes way back. After Book of Life, the studio that I was working at the time said, we are super happy with how it turned out. What are your next two projects that you'd want to make here? And I said, well, I want to do a Kung Fu Space Western, and then I have this Mesoamerican warrior princess thing, but it's 3 movies. And in 2015, for anybody to say, I want to do 3 back-to-back movies, impossible, right? Basically, Peter Jackson could do it with Lord of the Rings. They were not going to let me do that. So it was one of those projects where I just thought, I don't think anybody's going to let me make it. And I remember Sandra telling me, like, just make a graphic novel. Let's just do it as our own thing. Eventually, when I left the Lego Movie, and Netflix called me up, and they asked, what is something you think? I mean, the way it was asked, I don't think they're asking this way anymore. But the way it was asked to me was, pitch us something you don't think you can get made anywhere.
Mm.
And I said, well, I have this warrior princess idea. It's inspired by Mesoamerica, but she's going to die. That's the plot. She's going to go on this incredible journey, find others to help her, but in the end, she's going to realize she's the sacrifice. What if in Lord of the Rings, the ring was a character? And what if in Lord of the Rings, the ring chose to sacrifice itself?
Mm-hmm.
And they were like, oh my God, yeah, we want to make this. And I said, well, it's 3 movies. So if we break it up into 30-minute episodes, we could do a 9-episode limited series. And I had seen the guy who did Queen's Gambit had done Godless, a Western. And I love that thing. So I said, yeah, this is too big to be a movie. It's definitely not a TV show because the main character will be dying at the end. And they let me do it. And I remember pitching this idea to Zoe Saldana at an awards. Well, first I pitched it to her at the Book of Life premiere, and she was pregnant. And I remember telling her, like, Zoe, you're going to be the warrior princess, and she's going to die. And she, Zoe's lovely, lovely, incredible human being. And she just looked at me with these eyes of, like, fear. And Sandra said she looked like she was about to give birth. She was so scared when I said that. So years later, at our first record, I go, Zoe, this is the thing I told you about. She was like, honestly, Jorge, I don't remember that night, but as long as you want to make crazy stuff, I want to make crazy stuff with you. So let's do this. But that, yeah, Maya and the Three, definitely a once in a lifetime experience. I got to hire people who worked on El Tigre. I got to hire people who worked on Book of Life. Like it was a reunion of everybody and being back in LA. Magical, magical time. Definitely not something that I think would get made today. I think we're in a different landscape now. As well as Maya did, I think it's too risky. Like, what if it hadn't done well? It's such an expensive project, and obviously the fear with Maya was always, we think it'll do well in Latin America, we think it'll do well in the U.S., but Netflix is an international company. So, do we think it'll do well in Europe? Do we think it'll do well in Asia? To my complete surprise and shock, it did really well worldwide. It was like number one in Vietnam, number one in Greece, number one in Italy. Like it's crazy to me that this thing traveled that much. And I always tell this story of when I saw Seven Samurai as a kid in Mexico City. It's two videotapes. At the end, I told my dad, when I grow up, I want to be a samurai. So my dream is a kid in Japan watching Maya and going, Dad, when I grow up, I want to be an eagle warrior.
I love that. I mean, you guys are just incredible storytellers. But I'd love to hear a little bit more about what you were saying of like you just don't think that. I mean, this was only last year that you don't think now you could make a project like Maya.
I think what's happened is a lot of the idea that you can make niche things and you didn't have to worry about the world audience, that enough of a niche audience would justify the expense of that has gone away. I think with Disney Plus and HBO Max and Paramount Plus and Amazon and Apple and Netflix, it's really crowded in the streaming world. And so things, and the way they're saying things now is we're looking to make things the audience wants to see. That's just code for we want to make hits. And usually making hits means playing it safe in a lot of things and taking less risks and then doing the analytics of breaking stuff down and going, oh, for example, I'm terrified because at least on paper they go, look at all these Latin shows that didn't do well. Let's not make more Latin shows, right? Like that's scary. Hey, look at all these shows with this type of ethnic representation and they only did well in their community. Well, that doesn't justify the expense because they were meant to do well with everybody else. So that's the scary part of what's happening now. Netflix stock drop is going to make them, in my opinion, make more broad things and maybe less niche things. I think A-list directors and A-list creators will still get to make those swings. But I don't think they're going to be taking as many chances on up-and-comers or new voices because the last 3 years haven't been as profitable as they had hoped. And I definitely think shows from outside of the US doing really well worldwide and shows from the US only doing well in the US is not a good thing because that means shows aren't traveling. So it's an interesting time, but I definitely think wallets and purses are getting a little tighter. I think these gigantic mega overall deals might be coming to an end. We'll see, but definitely they still need to make really good stuff. They still need to make pay the bills. So they still need to make really popular things. My concern and worry from where I'm standing is if you go with the old guard who has made the proven things, those creators mostly are not diverse. And those voices that were getting those shots, the way it works is the more stuff you do, the better you get. So if you only got one shot and now they don't want to do stuff with you anymore, then how are you supposed to grow? And how are you supposed to evolve? And so that's what's worrying me right now.
Mm,
And as I'm seeing the stock drop on Netflix, I'm gonna guess there's a lot of course correction coming into all the studios. And I definitely think uh, the global awakening of encouraging new voices and encouraging authentic stories to happen, the results have not been 100% profitable. And so
mm.
they're definitely somewhere, someone's going, whoa, 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 let's make less stuff and let's make safer stuff. And that's going to hurt us.
Do you think that that has to do with like marketing, the way certain projects are marketed?
At least on my side, Netflix they get to control all that narrative. And definitely they go, and it's true, Queen's Gambit has zero marketing and it became one of the biggest hits in the world. Squid Game has zero marketing and people just discovered it and it's the biggest thing
Word
they've
of
ever
mouth,
made.
yeah.
Word of mouth. So their philosophy to us is if it's good, people will find it and people will tell other people and it will grow. That's super hard. And those are while those are successful examples, man, it's tough. And for creators, a lot of the time it falls on them to promote their thing. So with Maya, I mean, I worked full time promoting it. I did
Did
as
you were
much as I
sharing
could.
everybody's posts and answering questions?
Oh my god! And honestly, most creators don't don't want to do any of that stuff, and they go, "Wait, that's not my job. My job's to make the stuff really good. Isn't marketing and isn't everybody else supposed to be doing that?" And Netflix has incredible people, but they just make so much stuff. It's really tough to get any momentum. So it's weird. It falls on creators. So social media has become really important for creators. Obviously, whoever you're working with, that becomes an issue, right? You work with like I'm super thankful. Zoe Saldana posted about Maya, and Gabriel Iglesias posted about Maya, and Diego Luna posted about like all these guys help promote the show. And Twitter's not the real world, and kids aren't on Twitter, but definitely their parents are on Twitter, and a lot of people learn about stuff on Twitter. So all that stuff makes a difference. Instagram, TikTok, it's just a different world. But I will say, when something hits, it's usually never because someone planned it, right? No one knew Squid Game was going to be a gigantic hit. Again, it's like SpongeBob. No one planned SpongeBob.
Mhm.
No one planned Queen's Gambit to be a huge hit. These things happen because they were swinging big, because they were taking chances. So what's scary to me is when they go, well, now we only want to make hits like these things are hits. But the process to get those to be hits was not the process they're talking about. It's a different
Yeah.
thing.
And it's kind of scary because it's like, yeah, you want to make like Squid Games became a global phenomenon, but can season 2 of Squid Games hit that same exact or
Right.
higher? Like that's asking to like reach beyond the stars. And then how can other things compare to that if you're like, well, we want it to be like that. Like that was like a one-off like insane thing that doesn't happen every day. So then it becomes like what about all these other shows that maybe are winning Emmys or, getting recognition, but they're not on that level? Like, we deserve to have a little bit of it all. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's hard. It's hard.
and the thing that is the thing that's unfortunate is that this idea that we should, I guess the way I would phrase it is, in the early on, people want to shame Hollywood, and I don't think you can shame the robot. The robot has no feelings, right? So the robot thrives on success and box office and views and blah blah blah. I think if you tell the robot you should be showcasing, diverse voices and all these things, the robot doesn't care. The only reason the robot is showcasing those things is because it thinks it can make more money and it thinks it can get more. When those things don't happen, then the robot moves away.
Mm.
So to me, it's we have to constantly remind the robot, look at all the money you're leaving on the table.
Hmm.
Look at look at the statistics. Look at how 34% of box office audience is Latino. The Latinos went back to the movie sooner than anybody else. Latino moms spend the most on their kids than anybody else. Like when you start going, look at the power of these communities. Look at how unserved they are, and look at how much money you're not making, and look at how much money movies directed and shows created and shows with diverse casts are making. That's how you get the robot to turn.
Mm.
But every time something doesn't do well, the robot just looks away more. So that's where we're at right now. We need
Yeah.
hits.
Yeah. We do. And speaking of hits, I know you have another project coming out, I Chihuahua, with Fluffy Gabriel Iglesias. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, Gabriel is someone that he's someone that I've loved for a long time. He was in my first Disney pilot back in 2003, uh, and he's been on everything I made. I just love the guy. I've been a big fan of his. And
Cool.
at one of the Maya records, he said, "Hey Jorge, I have an idea." And with all respect to people, I get pitched a lot of stuff, and I'm always like, I don't want to do anybody's stuff. I just want to do my own stuff. I'm so sorry. Gabriel's idea was very much something. It was about lucha libre, and it had all these cool things in it, and I fell in love with it. And I was like, Gabriel, we should do this together. And I think he pitched it to me as a TV show, and then it turned into a movie, and then it just evolved and kept evolving and kept evolving. And then we pitched it together to Netflix, and Netflix loved it. And I'm a big lover of the Rocky films. I love Nacho Libre, but honestly, there's no animated Mexican wrestling movie. There's no Lucha Libre cartoon. So this is it for me. Like I went all in. I put a ton of stuff in about my life and my family. We put a ton of stuff about Gabriel in there. Obviously, we can't announce the cast yet. It's too early. We can't announce any of that stuff. But this thing's going to be incredible. It's so crazy. And a lot of my friends early on were like, "What? This sounds like a celebrity, cash grab." I'm like, "Yes, I want everybody to think this is a celebrity cab crash, so that when people are crying and freaking out when they watch this movie, it's completely unexpected."
I can't wait. I love Fluffy. He's like my family's favorite comedian.
Oh, he's
So
a
when I was
genius.
getting married earlier this year, I like sent him an invitation and he sent me back a little card that he signed and I was like, this is the
Oh,
greatest. This is
I love him.
amazing.
Yeah.
He's so funny. Um and just I'm so excited to watch you guys working together and putting both of your own experiences into this movie. I can't
And
wait.
you know what's amazing about Gabriel? So obviously people know him as a comedian. He's really hilarious, but if you really listen to his comedy, it's really heartfelt. There's a lot of really soulful things he's talking about,
Mhm.
and I've gotten to know that side of him, and it's interesting. It's almost like this movie is going to tell a different side of Gabriel that people haven't seen. But man, he's amazing.
And then I'm just curious. I've always wondered, like, obviously you're an animation guy. Would you ever do a live action anything, or has that ever like come up for you?
I get offers to do live action all the time. I just love the medium of animation so much, but never say never. I did live action in school, and obviously I'm a big lover of live action. I probably watch more live action than animation, but the right thing hasn't hit. I've been close, but right now I'm sticking to animation for the meantime. But definitely might be in the cards in the future.
Is there anything else that you have coming up that you can share?
I mean, they haven't announced these two things, but I'm in development at Netflix doing my first ever adult animation thing.
Oh, wow.
I'm a big fan of Gendy. Gendy did Primal, the dinosaur and I love that thing. So basically that's what inspired me to pitch my own thing. I can't say what it is yet, but hopefully they announce it soon. And then I have another giant epic Maya esque series in development that's definitely going to be connected to Maya.
Oh.
So those are the three big things I'm working on right
Oh my gosh. Well, I cannot wait. I am so excited for everything you work on. Literally, I'm ready to buy my next Tigre art book. I'm ready to watch everything that you have coming up. It's been so amazing speaking with you. So thank you. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for your kindness. You're obviously a lovely person. So
Thank
thank you, and thank you for all the support.
Of course, of course. Thank you again to the King, Jorge R Gutierrez, for joining us today and having this incredible conversation about animation, telling diverse stories, and where he is going next. You can watch the video version of Pop Culture Planet at youtube.com/Kmaldo, listen to the audio version on your favorite podcast listening platforms, or get more insight at our news outlet, popcultureplanet.net. Keep up with the podcast by following me pretty much everywhere at Kmaldo, that's KAYMALDO, or the show at Pop Cult Planet. You can also support the podcast with your very own Pop Culture Planet merch at teespring.com/stores/Kmaldo. If you enjoyed this episode, consider subscribing so you know when a new one is posted, rate and review this podcast, and share it with your fellow pop culture lovers. Thanks for listening. It's been a blast, and I'll catch you in the latest episode. Consider subscribing if you like my videos, and if you want to talk more TV and movies with me outside of the comments section, check out the exclusive Discord available on my Patreon at patreon.com/Kmaldo. If you like this one, you can check out more of my videos right over here. See ya!